This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Wellth Talks with myself, Garry Kelly of GK Media, Pádraic Ó Máille of Smácht and Niall Leyden of Atlantic Wealth Management. And on this week's episode, we're going to talk about something that we should all be comfortable and confident doing, but it isn't that case for everyone. And it's really getting to the essence of why we do it. I'm talking about public speaking, and the reason we do it is it's all about sharing our story to people. And you can get it so wrong. So I'm going to tell you a little story first. One of my first gigs doing public speaking was I was the best man for my brother when he was getting married in Sligo many, many years ago. And on the way up to Sligo, I started writing the speech and I was flicking through.
You were preparing well, Garry, in advance. What is it Niall says with them 7 P's he has? Go on, Niall, give it to us
Perfect
again.
prior prepreparation prevents poor performance.
I really admire your preparation, Garry. Yeah, go for it. Sorry for interrupting.
So I was writing the speech in the car. I was flicking through a book on best man speeches.
Oh, you were reading up on the topic. Yeah, in the car.
Yeah. I was multitasking,
and you were
research
driving
and
as
writing.
well, were you?
No, I was a passenger in the back.
Passenger. Yeah.
I was being chauffeured up by Dad, you know. Yeah. And so I was bouncing off the ideas to them, whatever. And then I was laughing away, saying, "Oh, I won't tell them this, but this will be funny, whatever." And it was trying to get the structure of the speech right. You know, you want to pay homage or tribute to the new wife.
Homage, is that Irish, Niall? Is it?
That was in the book
that's
as well.
a beautiful. I remember that in Peg
Thank God you
Sayers.
weren't at the wedding anyway.
So tell us a bit more about the homage, Garry.
So I paid tribute to my brother and to his new wife and welcomed her into the family and all this sort of thing. At the very end, then I said, and before I forget, let's toast the bridesmaids. Don't they look absolutely fabulous today? And everyone's like, yeah. And then I said, after all, it's amazing what makeup can do. And I killed the room. So in my head, it was funny.
And did it die?
It died. And I died that day. So in my head, it was funny, but no one else in the room thought it was funny. And it's you can get it wrong so easily. Yeah. And that was a big lesson for me, where I think when you're public speaking, you can't let the ego come into it. You can't think you're the entertainer. And we've all been at weddings where you've had best man speeches and they're amazing, and you've had other ones when you're nearly crawling under the table because it's just so cringy. Yeah. I think it's so important when you're doing public speaking that you bring the crowd on your side. So I was doing a talk recently for a group of Americans who were over in Galway. And I first started off talking to them. I found out casually chatting to them beforehand where they were all from. And I'd been to all the places they were from. So I started off saying, "Oh, I believe we've people here from California. I love California." I started naming places I went to. Then I said, I love New York and Boston. And I was naming doing all the name dropping. So they're all loving me. And then I said, "By the way, I'm a big Raiders fan." And they're all booing. And I said, "Well, the reason I'm a Raiders fan is because that's an excuse for me to go to Las Vegas and support the Raiders once a year with my friend and have a boys' weekend." And they all started laughing and so on. And then we got into the flow of the conversation. But it was like building that repertoire, that connection, making that connection with them beforehand. Then they were tuned in for the storytelling. But I wasn't landing any bad punchlines at the end of the conversation or the speech. I learned my way. But Pádraic, you're always at public speaking events. You consult people on public speaking. You do it yourself. I mean, you've probably done hundreds at this stage. For you, what are the things that are so important for people?
I think you've just mentioned 2 of them, Garry. I think we all have a different style with respect to preparation. As you know, amongst the 3 of us, Niall loves to prepare, and he does.
Years in advance.
The whole years in advance.
Even before he knows the event is on.
Even before he knows.
No comment.
Yeah. Okay, but that's absolutely fine. You actually come in and you do it absolutely cold, and I love that. And you've had huge experience, mostly on radio over the years, where you have to do that. I have a thing called the prepared impromptu. It almost sounds as if I haven't prepared it, but I have. And I don't know if we've told the story on one of these podcasts, but it's right back to Niall. It's Adrian Tahany. He was ex-Bank of Ireland. I think he was ex-Education Building Society.
Yeah.
And I was part of a group called Junior Chamber in Galway. Adrian was president of that 1,000 years ago. The quincentennial in Galway. There was a magnificent night in the college. There must have been 600 people in there. And Tahany gave a speech for the ages. It was absolutely brilliant. And we were all stunned. And I can remember saying to him afterwards, I said, geez, Adrian, that was just class. And yeah. I kind of made it up as I went along, he said. And it looked like that. It really did. I was appalled afterwards that somebody found his notes. And we broke it down. He said, yeah. He said, that was a prepared impromptu. He said 80% of that speech was prepared. I took 20% off the floor. And I think it's a lovely thing is to always have a prepared impromptu. I saw it done brilliantly again with one of the presenters who really impresses me is Bill Clinton. There was a wonderful, I think it was the IFI, the Ireland Fund had a reception. Clinton was president of America and John Bruton was Taoiseach of Ireland. And it was an infamous day on telly. Garry, you would have remembered this, where Clinton met I think it was a Catholic boy and a Protestant girl in Belfast, and Sky Television and all the media took it and it went worldwide. And there was a dinner in Dublin Castle that I was privileged to attend.
You were at it?
I was at that. I was doing facilitation for the Ireland Fund. Bruton was given literally, I mean, they'd come from Belfast to Dublin. They had no time to prepare. And Bruton was given a speech by a civil servant. And he read it, and it was grand, and people clapped politely. Clinton came up, and he too was given a speech by a prepared speech by his civil servant. And he looked at it, and he looked at the audience, and he said, I will never forget what that Catholic boy said to me today. 2 lines, he gave the line, and I forget what the second line was, and he went straight into the written speech that he was given. And then, to end with, he said, I will never forget what that Protestant girl said to me in Belfast today. He only added 2 sentences at the top and 2 sentences at the end, and he got a standing ovation for, I would say, 3 minutes. And that, for our listeners, is the power of a great beginning and a great ending and a little story, a story that was current, but most of that speech was prepared. The difference in impact between him and, God rest his soul, John Bruton, who was a wonderful man, but in terms of the impact, and that's why I think today's subject is so important to not just people in business, but to everybody. I wish it was taught at school.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And sorry, Niall, before I let you, Garry, just in case I lose it, what you say about the wedding is so important. And many of us kind of think, yeah, we'll wing it and we'll be impromptu. It's really important. Certain speeches count for more. Certain speeches, lifetime speeches, like your brother's wedding, we need to get those right. Another would be a eulogy at a funeral. I always remember my great teacher, Brendan O'Rourke, would say, he said, Pádraic, get the details spot on. Don't be winging it when you're giving a eulogy at a funeral. Equally in a boardroom.
Like you want to get the person's name right.
You want to get the name right. You want to get dates. And it's a kind of a serious point, but I'm very happy you brought it up on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Would we leave Niall out of this? I don't think
so,
Niall ever makes
speeches
speeches in public. Yeah, we can kind of get on with this.
Yeah, you can ask questions afterwards.
Maybe ask him, has he any questions? Yeah.
One quick tip though as well is someone came up to me before after I was doing a presentation for a Culture Ireland event. And I was in the venue where I had done this recording with someone 20 years ago, and I was shown samples of the video recording and so on. And I was bringing it all back to me, and this person's family was there now. This man was long since deceased. And, you know, there was a lot of emotions in the room and so on. And there was nerves from me because I knew how important and sensitive this presentation was. And someone came up to me afterwards and gave me the best advice. He said, Garry, will you do me a favor? I said, what? He says, don't be nervous, because when you're nervous, you make us nervous, as in the audience. And there's nothing worse, I think, at the start for a presentation when someone's like, oh, I'm not used to doing this, I'm really nervous. Because then we're all nervous for you because we're on the edge saying, oh, is this just going to be a disaster? So don't be nervous because then everyone feels nervous for you. Go in and just enjoy it.
But Garry, I'm nervous now. Like we're doing a live podcast. What would we tell Niall? Niall has a huge speech tomorrow in front of, I don't know, in the Clayton Hotel. I mean, Garry, if that was me, I wouldn't sleep tonight. I would be down. I'd go down to Chinocton's now, I must say.
What's your plan for tomorrow?
What's your plan for nerves tomorrow night? Never mind the speech.
I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go home and watch the King's speech. I'm going to pretend I'm Colin Firth and I'm going to stand and speak. Have you seen the film?
Yeah, of course.
The King's speech. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to put on Braveheart. You look at Mel Gibson. That was transformative. Like you talk about public speaking, I don't see it as public speaking. It's a superpower. I think it is, whether you're at the kitchen table with the kids, whether you're on a football pitch, whether you're in a dressing room. And I think, and you're right, thanks for the photograph. But at a very serious level, I genuinely do think, if you think of when children are born, when babies are born, to say there's two things that the babies are born with, a fear of falling and a fear of, would you believe, loud noises. And I think this fear of public speaking has to do a lot with the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
As we get a little bit older, I think back to, I look at, say, Mark and Michelle. They'll do anything, anywhere.
Your children, yeah.
Nobody judge them. Whereas you're right, as you said, I'm wondering, well, will I get it right? Will it be good? Will it be great? But I go back to what I often say to my clients, comparison is the enemy of thieves. Stay in your own lane, stick to the plan. What anyone thinks of Pádraic or Garry or you or me or the team, it's none of our business.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, Pádraic. You were good enough to share with me last year when I was doing my 10 Commandments, which was a first for me. Never have done a podcast. A couple of techniques around breathing and visualization. And
the 3 pints before.
Very important. 0-0 and a little red press.
No,
but
that didn't work.
I was only looking there, I think it was about 6 months ago, when Michelle Obama was being interviewed and she talked for 15 minutes with Oprah about this imposter syndrome that she had. And I think that's all very prevalent. I think of the businesses we're dealing with and people are asked to present, they're running fabulous businesses, employing lots of various different people, but they have this, it's nearly worse than the fear of dying, the fear of standing up, whether it's in front of 20 or, as you said, a couple of hundred people.
I'd hate to be doing one tomorrow, Garry. It'd ruin my weekend completely.
Yeah.
I'm being serious.
I was talking to a lecturer recently, because I just want to go back to the school thing for a second, Pádraic. I was talking to a lecturer from a college recently, and he was saying that the students, so part of their module is they have to go up and do a pitch for their documentary that they want to do with their short film. And he said, nowadays the students, this is third level education, will tell the lecturer, I don't want to do the presentation.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable doing it. I won't be doing it. Because you said this should be done in school, and it's 100% like, Niall, you said it's a superpower. It is a superpower. Being able to get up and stand in front of people, we should all be able to do it. The reality is we're not. But if you want to work in the film industry and you're not able to pitch a documentary or a short film to people, you're never going to get a gig. You're never going to get it.
Yeah.
You have to be able to tell your story. You have to be able to sell yourself.
I was at a speaker school there about 6 weeks ago. I just did a day with a friend of ours, good friend of the three of ours, Jerry Duffy.
Yeah, legend.
32 marathons in 32 days. But we were just chatting around, when you are presenting, is very often open with what you do brilliantly, better than anyone, a story or a statement or a question. Somebody in our world in wealth management or financial planning, if you look at Warren Buffett, the only one thing hanging in his office is what? Yeah. What exactly does anyone know?
I do. It's a brilliant story. Go on, Niall, you finish it.
No, go on. So
the only certificate up on the wall was a Dale Carnegie public speaking course, presentation skills course that he'd attended. The only recognition of anything in his life. You're spot on, Niall.
So the only thing important to him in terms of a certificate was for public speaking.
Yeah.
100%. Why is that then, Pádraic?
Well, he regarded it clearly, as Garry's just said it, as the superpower, as the ultimate, so he did, yeah.
So I just bring it back to anything I do at a much more modest level to what you're doing every other day, but in life and in business, and you look at Alex Ferguson, you look at McElroy, you look at all the various orators, whether it's as you'd say, an obituary or an eulogy or motivating the under 15s there at a rugby or football match, or even sitting with the kids. It's just being cool, being calm, being collected, which very often it's easier said than done. Pádraic, have you any tips for our listeners in terms of how, if you're presenting, if you're with Ivan Yates or Bobby Kerr, what are your top tips?
I thought it was Gary who was asking the questions. I haven't.
He's turned into a bit of a school teacher here, hasn't he?
I haven't prepared for that one. So I think it's fascinating what you said about Dale Carnegie, and I'm delighted you did bring it up seriously. Dale Carnegie began life by organising little small gatherings where people would make a presentation every evening after work. And, you know, he gave them the basics of communication, which I will give you some now, Niall. But, and then he would have them present. And what he noticed was, okay, they improved technically. But the big one was their confidence went through the roof. That was the biggest benefit of learning to present. I saw it in Junior Chamber. Junior Chamber was really powerful in Galway back in the 80s. I saw people coming in with stammers. I saw people coming in with such low self-esteem. And what we did was we created a safe environment. It was a bit of fun. It was a bit of crack. And people would get up and they'd make their presentation and they'd get feedback and say, well, you know what? You have a stammer, but it's bloody endearing. And I'll tell you, you've got brilliant courage. And they went out of that room 8 foot tall. I do, and Gary brought it up. I would love to see that. No. It was your question, but Carnegie pioneered that. I think it's I do think it's wonderful. And at a personal level, it was probably the most significant thing that happened in my life. And I've told Gary on a different podcast, on the Gary podcast, the story. I was an only child. My mother made a great decision to send me to boarding school in Rossgrey.
Why was it good to go to boarding school?
I'll tell you in a little bit. Well, I'll tell you now. I'll tell you one of the big reasons. So I went down in about, April of 1979, I think it was, to do my entrance exam. A letter arrived about a week afterwards to say I'd made the cut. I was being accepted to Rossgrey, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought I was a genius, and I was telling everybody. And I arrived down to Rossgrey on about the 3rd of September. And I was looking at the watch here. And she's saying 1979. This is a long way to go.
Short for
so I tell you, I'd like to start booing when he's on stage tomorrow. Saying, "Shady, Max, so you get him." In any event, I went down to Rossgrey, and the great thing that happened, you talked about the power of relationships, and you talked about the power of being wanted. I met 2 lads. I met one lad from Galway, Colin O'Connor, and his cousin Jim, and we got on like a house on fire. The worst night in boarding school was meant to be the first night. I had a ball. I'd met 2 guys, and I was really thick as thieves with them. All went swimmingly until breakfast the next day in the ref. And the president, Father Peter Garvey, said, go outside and you'll find your classes. And that was fine. 60 people were brought into Rossgrey that year, into first year. So we went outside and Jim said, I'm in the A class. And I said, just, would you ever have a look for my name there, lads? I hope I'm in with you, Jim. And Colm says, I'm in the B class. And I says, which one am I in? And neither kind of said it, but I was in the C class. And all of a sudden, it had a huge impact on me. I was been taken away from my friends. I was put into the C class, and I was there on merit. I went to the president, Father Peter, that day, and I says, Father, I want to get out of the C class. And he kind of laughed. He was a very nice man. He said, Pádraic, why? I says, I want to be with my friend Colm in the B class. And he said, well, it's not as simple as that. He said, it was based on your results in the entrance exam. You came 55th in the entrance exam, yeah? The top 20 lads are in the A class. The next 20 are in the B. You're there on merit and well done. You know, he didn't say well down, but he said, it's very clear. I said, I want to get out of it. And he said, well, let me think about it. And he didn't let me off with it. But this is where the magic happened. About 2 days later, he came to me and he said, Pádraic, would you be willing to show up on Saturday afternoon, which was our time off? He said, to compete in an Irish debating public speaking competition. And I says, why, Father? Well, he said, we might find something out about you. And at that stage, I'd have done anything, guys. I really would. My prime motivation was getting out of the C class. And luckily, it was Irish debating, and I had Irish. And that day, a man called Brendan O'Rourke, still a great friend of mine, He was the Irish and English teacher in Roscrea, and he gave us all a motion each. Very difficult. My motion was Níl Ra gan an Smácht, which essentially means there's no success without discipline. Now, can you imagine a 12-year-old kid being given that? I'll tell you, Obama wouldn't have spoken as well as I spoke that day because I was so motivated. On Monday morning, I was called in by Father Peter and Brendan O'Rourke, and I was put into the B class, yeah? That was all down to presentation skills. That was motivated by me, by motivation. The story doesn't end there. Brendan O'Rourke wanted an Irish debating team. We were a non-Gaeltacht school, and he wanted to win the Munster Championship. He wanted Roscrea to be the first non-Gaeltacht school to win the Munster Championship. And in my intercert, we were the first year to win that. I ended up in 6A in Roscrea, and I ended up getting a really, really, really good leaving cert. And it had nothing to do with intelligence. My entrance exam marks were exactly the same. Yeah. But my confidence, my articulation, my ability to be given a question and debate it, even if I knew nothing about it. I think every kid should be given that opportunity.
So you're saying from debating in school, that kind of gave you the confidence to do this now professionally in your
Absolutely, Gary.
And did someone then from the B class get bumped to the C class because you took a seat?
Yeah, probably. And you know what? Yes, that probably happens in life. Hey, come here.
He's listening to this podcast going, I hate that part.
No. Hey, guys, it's not your idea. It's not the fella or the girl who is the best idea or product or service. It's the person who can present best, yeah? Always remember that. That's why I think today's topic is so important. And if he's going to ask me again, because he's kicking me under the table, let me come back. I'll give five...
Some of the great leaders are not just, but they're great speakers. You know, we had the presidential election on there a few weeks ago. But when people are generally going for elections, politicians, whatever, people make their decision often on actually how articulate someone comes across, how confident they come across. The person who mightn't be the most articulate could be the greatest politician or the greatest leader, but they just can't, sell themselves that well. And again, if someone is in business today and they're listening, you may be brilliant in business, but if you're not able to sell yourself to the people, I mean, that's why, with respect, Niall is standing in front of 400 people. He's able to tell a story. He's able to talk about, what makes him different in wealth management compared to what others are doing out there. You have to be able to sell yourself. Sure.
And in fairness, Niall, to him, even though we slag him till cows come home, he prepares better than almost anybody I know. He puts the preparation in. And the great presenters, whether it's Adrian Tahany doing it impromptuly, or Niall doing it very openly, preparation's key. And he did ask me for some tips. Preparation is really, really powerful. Really, really is. I go back to Clinton and indeed the opening. One acronym I'll give your listeners. It's BREME. You won't find it in any dictionary. It's 5 things to remember about your next presentation, whether that's a sales call in 5 minutes time, or whether it's a speech like at a wedding, like your brother's wedding. B stands for the 2 most important aspects of any presentation are the beginning and the ending. And I've always said it, you put 80% of your preparation into the beginning and the ending. Yeah, okay. Forget about the rest of it. Seriously, into the beginning and ending. That's what people remember. The R stands for repeat regularly. Niall does it the whole time. You'll hear the power of 3 in his voice, the words. That's a repetition. And people say, why are you repeating yourself? Because the brain needs repetition. E stands for emphasize dramatically. If Niall has a blank tomorrow in front of the 400 people there, everyone will remember that. They'll say, that was the lovely guy who actually forgot his words up there, but we all loved him for it. He was so authentic. That was dramatic emphasis. The M in BREME stands for maximize involvement. The day of the person getting up and doing the county council speech, and it's all about them. Get the audience involved, and it's so easy. So BREME in one word, 5 things: begin powerfully, end powerfully, repeat regularly. You notice I'm doing that, and even by giving you 5, Niall is putting it down there. He's repeating.
No, he's writing like the clappers here. He definitely is nervous now about tomorrow.
He's right.
I never saw him taking those before.
There you go.
So that's a whole presentation skills course in one word.
Yeah. And you had said something, Niall, about firstly start with a story.
Starting with a story is start asking a question.
Okay, yeah.
So if you think back to, we'll say, the All Ireland Business Foundation, the entrepreneurial meetup, starting with a story and also asking the audience a question, whether it's around, we talked a lot around health as well. We were talking around purpose, plan and portfolio, beginning with the end in mind. If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
I've never heard any of those before. I've never heard him say these things. What, really, Max?
The audience lit up.
Yeah.
The audience lit up. So that was brilliant. Well done, Garry.
Was that the enemy talking?
I'd say we're an hour in.
Is he trying to get us to shut up, Pádraic? All right.
Are we over 20 minutes?
We are, yeah. But no, I think this is important for people. So, look, we shared some technique, and as Niall said there, you can start with a question, you can start with a story. As Pádraic is saying, it's not all about you.
Oh, so the whole podcast's not over. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're still live.
I thought we were finished. That just shows you, ladies and gentlemen. That just shows you, ladies and gentlemen, you got to be able to fly with instruments and without. Sorry, Garry.
All right. Let's wrap this one up then. But I would strongly encourage people to challenge themselves, if they haven't done it, to do some public speaking. And even finish up on Pádraic, you had said a great thing to me a few months ago about, we all have a story. Let's actually figure out how we articulate our story. Again, I was in talking with a group of students from my former university recently, and I was going back over the last number of years of what I've been doing career-wise. I've noticed, like, over the years of doing speeches, there's a kind of, this story has just naturally come together of what is my story. But sometimes it's good to just get pen to paper and actually write down what our story is and how do we want to tell that story as well. Because there's bits you can keep in, there's bits you might want to get rid of, the things you might want to embellish on, or so on. But then even nearly repeating it so often that it just flies off the tongue, like it's no problem, you're not nervous about it, that you become so used to telling your story that you have finessed and polished so well that that'll give you huge confidence as well when it comes to public speaking.
Sure.
Niall, do you want me to finish up now?
Not at all. We're only starting. We're only getting going.
Look, I know he's a big event tomorrow, so he wants to wrap it up. So thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Wellth Talks. And please do share the episodes with your friends, your colleagues, leave us comments, reviews, whatever kind of positive, proactive feedback you can give us. It'll be very much welcomed and appreciated. Have a fantastic week, and we look forward to talking to you again next Friday.
This is a GK Media podcast.